Hello and welcome to the Retro Hour podcast, episode number 52, your weekly dose of retro gaming and technology news with me, Dan Wood.
And me, Ravi Abbott.
And Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Are you still nursing that hangover, Dan?
Well, from Christmas?
Yeah.
I think I would be nursing a hangover for like 3 months, I think.
Have you got any resolutions this year?
Oh, well, you know what? Well, actually, I'm doing dry January now.
Okay.
So I did dry October, didn't I, a couple of months ago?
Oh.
After that, though, I don't know about you, everything I tend to do as a New Year's resolution tends to fall by the wayside.
Yeah.
So
pretty much. 2 days.
Well, I'm thinking this year, okay, maybe not go to the gym. That's one of my New Year's resolutions.
Excellent.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sleep more.
Yep.
Eat more junk food, drink more alcohol. I'll stick to all them. That'll be fine.
Yeah, maybe it'll work.
Waste all my money on video games even more.
Yeah.
How was your Christmas anyway? You have a nice one?
Oh, yeah, it's good. Got plenty of nice things, and I'm just feeling a bit podgy at the moment.
Aren't we all?
That's it, yeah.
So, hope you guys had amazing Christmases, and welcome to our first show of 2017.
Totally.
What year it's going to be as well.
Yeah, and what a guest we've got today.
We were saying, weren't we, who's going to be on our first show of 2017? Because we want to hit the ground running, want to start this year with a bang.
Well, it's 2017. And we've got the head of Team 17. Yeah, it's Martyn Brown. And, you know, this guy took the company from the smallest kind of roots as a public domain company to having the Worms franchise to being one of the world's most recognised software houses.
Thinking of the Team 17 games I used to play, obviously Worms DC.
Project X.
Alien Breed.
That? Yeah, all of those.
Super Stardust.
Superfrog.
Oh, it's so many. I mean, you know, I think in terms of like those kind of mid-90s real quality games that came out on the Amiga, and I mean, you know, Team 17, Worms is like on every franchise, isn't it?
I think it was ported to 32 different systems. It's an insane amount of different popularity it had.
It's probably Worms, Lemmings and Doom that are the 3 games that are on everything, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Martyn is our first guest. Martyn Brown from Team 17 is going to be on the Retro Hour in around 20 minutes from now. And we're going to keep this quality going all the way through this year as well.
Totally. And we're going to be running a competition as well.
Now we are. Now, do you remember a guest we had on last summer? A couple of famous guys who were known for a certain quite popular video games character from the UK.
Yeah, 2 guests actually.
It was, wasn't it?
Yeah, a pair of twins, and they're the Oliver twins. They've just released a great book. What's it called, Dan?
They have. Now, this is the story of the Oliver twins. Let's Go Dizzy.
You've got it in your hands there.
Have listen.
Oh,
that
nice.
Sounds
and
like
fresh.
a quality book, doesn't it? Even smells like, you know. I love the smell of freshly printed books.
Yeah, but this book's fantastic. You know, they sent us a preview copy,
Yeah.
and it's basically got about the unreleased games that they had. It's got about their history. It's got some incredible photos with really bad 80s fashion throughout.
In some of these, Dizzy's actually dressed better than the Oliver twins.
Yeah. It's kind of the real British story here, from like homebrew to success. And you know, if you're a Dizzy head or you're a massive fan, this is just perfect. And we're offering you a unique opportunity. You can get a signed, personalised version by the Oliver twins in your name if you win this competition.
So this is 230 pages, this book, all in full colour, gorgeous glossy pages as well. And there is, you know, when we interviewed them last summer, and if you did miss that episode, we'll pop it in our show notes as well, because it was a really, really good interview we did with them. And they were kind of hinting at a few little bits, and they were like, you know, there is some juicy stories, but you'll have to read it in the book. You know, some kind of the Codemasters kind of years and the controversy, and, you know, a little bit more. I loved reading a bit about Ghostbusters 2, you know, when they worked on that game and the design process and stuff. It's like such an interesting book. And actually reading through this, you think, these guys did a hell of a lot in the 80s.
Totally, and there's so much unreleased stuff in there.
Yeah.
It's like a treasure trove.
So if you'd like to win a signed, personalised copy of the Oliver Twins' new book, they will sign it, you know, with your name, best wishes, a couple of kisses and all that, no doubt, as well. Then all you've got to do is head onto our website, theretrohour.com, and answer this question. Who is Dizzy's girlfriend? Now, this is multiple choice as well.
Is it A, Princess Peach?
Is it B, Daisy?
C, Amy?
So if you're a Dizzy fan, that one should be pretty easy, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
All you got to do, head onto our website, theretrohour.com. The competition is going to be open for the next 2 weeks. So we're going to close it on January the 21st. That's a Friday night at midnight. So you've got 2 weeks to enter this competition. Leave your details on there, and then we'll pick out one winner at random from all the correct entries. Get the terms and conditions, enter that competition, and this signed copy of the Oliver Twins book could be yours on theretrohour.com. Now, before we get into this week's news, we just want to thank our very generous donators. Of course, every week, you know, we've said this before, but, this is helping us keep the show going in 2017. So, guys, thank you so much. And obviously, with it being January, all the hosting stuff, we've been doing this a year now. Everything's due for renewal this month. So anything in the little tip jar does help. Thank you to Scott Marsden for your donation.
Sebastian Kurman.
And also Colin Reed, who've all made very generous donations through our little PayPal link at theretrohour.com. Now, kind of referencing back to guests that we had on the show last year, there has been a pretty high-profile Amiga movie that's been in development for, I think, about 6 years. It's been in the making.
Yeah, it's like all these guests we've had on, they've finally released all this stuff they've been talking about. And this is Viva Amiga. And actually, as you're listening now, it should be released worldwide on iTunes and all these platforms. Hulu, I think it's on
Vimeo and stuff.
Vimeo, yeah.
So, Viva Amiga finally came out today, 6th of January, day this show comes out. And Zach, actually, we did an interview with Zach last year. Really interesting guy, very passionate. I think the movie was delayed a bit longer than he wanted to, but he's finally got it out there now. And we've seen it. We actually got a little early invite to watch the film before anyone else.
Check it out on amigafilm.com as well. That will have all your links.
Yeah, that's our website. So now that we've seen the film, what do you think?
I thought it was really good. I thought it was a very American focused, but it was a very different to the Bedrooms to Billions film as well. So they're not kind of clashing on certain subjects, they've both got their place.
Absolutely. They really do complement each other. I think, because this movie, the runtime is just over an hour long. And, when I started watching it, I was like, oh, just an hour. I thought, is that going to be enough time to kind of cover everything like the story of the Amiga? But actually the movie, it kind of flows really well and it's really punchy. You never get bored watching it. It's just like the speed of the way they go through stuff, but they just give you the really important bits.
Well, that's it. If you've got a little bit of film and you mention something really good and then it's kind of, they've got nice transition visual effects and stuff, it really flows with the story, and the production levels on this are insane. Mind-blowing
graphics. And obviously, one of our team, Paul Kitchen, he's actually been heavily involved in the 3D on this movie as well. And
it's cinema style 3D. It's like, wow, yeah.
You can see why Paul, I don't think anyone saw him for about 6 months today at one point.
No, I think he nearly pulled all of his hair out as well.
But it's so worth it. It's actually mind-blowing, some of the animations and stuff. You've never seen the Amiga look more beautiful, and the graphics and stuff like that. And also, what I think about this film as well is, and Zach mentioned this when he was on in our interview, and I think he's really achieved this, it's a very accessible film. It is really, even if you're not like an Amiga head, like obviously my girlfriend kind of knows I like the Amiga and she's seen me using it and stuff. But when I was watching this, she kind of came in halfway through and sat on the couch, started watching it and actually got quite interested in it.
It's not techie. It's not like the first part of Bedrooms to Billions. I love that stuff because that's my kind of target, which is all the kind of, start of how the computers came, the chips, the chip models, all of this.
Yeah.
But this one didn't have that at all. It was I wouldn't say surface, but it was just in that nice kind of place where it's accessible, but also a bit nerdy.
I think it focused more on the people than the actual, the story and how it affected people and it touched people. It was a story
the people rather than the hardware.
It wasn't showing you like this is the CIA chip and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly, because in the Amiga years, they talked about how, the mouse flowed really well and this helped certain games and stuff like this, where this is people's experience. And,
absolutely. And it kind of, it goes from like the early days with RJ and those, the guys' original High Toro Amiga team, and then it kind of goes through the Commodore years. You did mention it is quite American focused, and really, there's not really a mention of the UK in this at all.
Well, he's also mentioned it. He may be doing a part 2.
Yeah.
So we're going to get Zach on, and we're going to get him to tell us about this part 2 and what's going to be in there, because... it was big in Europe and stuff, but all the creators are in America as well. So it's quite hard to kind of fit the whole Amiga world in a film, I guess.
Well, I think, the Bedrooms to Billions was a lot more of the UK focus, wasn't it?
So but it was also very gaming focused, wasn't it?
So, exactly. So, and, there's even people in here, some of the bits I loved in the film where they've got like Kristen White, and Jason Compton, who used to write Amiga Report magazine, if you remember that back in the 90s. Quite a few guys that we've never really seen on film before and that kind of stuff, but also just people that were users and loved the Amiga, talking about why it touched them and how it affected them. And I'd say out of all like the computer films I've ever watched, this is the most emotional as well.
Definitely.
It's like
Dave Needle as well.
Yeah, I think it's Dave Needle's second to last interview, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But, it's just like you can really feel, it's a very up and down movie. You really feel the heartbreak when things went wrong, but then it ends on a good positive note. So it's...
you can tell it's been filmed over a long period because Trevor's hair's still black.
Yeah, I think they did start filming a lot of it about 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Poor Trevor. Looking good though, Trev, looking good. So, of course, if you want to watch that, it is out today. Head to amigafilm.com and we will do a follow-up with Zach and find out what he's got in the pipeline next.
Totally.
Now, this is quite an interesting story. The first ever NES, Nintendo Entertainment System advert has been found. Now, you might be thinking, what was it, lost? But this is a guy who's he's a big Nintendo enthusiast. He's actually an archivist or archivist. Don't know how you say that. This guy's name is Frank Kifaldi, and he's been trying to track down the first ever advert for the NES in North America. And he knew where it was located in a magazine, but he's been trying to find it for 5 years. So this has been a hunt to try and get this copy of this magazine from late 1984, and he's finally tracked it down. And it's in a magazine called Consumer Electronics. And it looks pretty cool, actually. There is kind of, it's a little teaser. See Nintendo unveil home entertainment's future, January the 5th, 1985. And there's a picture of like a monitor with like a, drape over it so you can't see what's in there.
Yeah, yeah.
And next to it, they've got like Pong and an Atari. And it says the evolution of a species is now complete.
It's interesting because I'm looking at this and there's a picture of it below where it says, Nintendo video game system, new market ground rules. And it kind of looks like my scale at home that I use to weigh myself in the morning.
It looks nothing like the release version, does it?
No.
Well, what it is, because he's actually saying the magazine's screwed up here. Because they put this advert in there and it's all kind of, mysterious with the veil over and all that. But apparently, a few pages earlier, in their news section, 5 pages before that, is this picture of it. So,
wow. Yeah.
They kind of ruined the surprise a little bit.
But it kind of looks a bit like a steamrollers ran over a NES and just flattened it,
But what I think's cool about this is it's not the final NES, it's a prototype called the AVS, the Advanced Video Game System that is on display at Nintendo World in New York City. Ah. So what it is, that's kind of a prototype NES. And next to it, at first I thought, was that a VHS video?
Yeah, it really looks like one, apart from it's got two little kind of buttons on it or something.
Well, that is the prototype controller. Interestingly, it was going to be wireless.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in 1984.
That would have been good. Infrared, probably.
Yeah, probably wouldn't have been good.
Yeah. Your brother runs in front of the TV. Oh, no.
Put your hand over the sensor, yeah. The only system I've ever had with like infrared remote controls is like the Commodore CD TV.
Yeah.
You don't want to game with that controller over infrared.
You have to stick in one position.
It's just, lag city. So I can see why they went to wired, at that stage. But, for some, I've never really seen that AVS prototype before. I thought it was pretty cool that you tracked that down.
No, that's really cool.
Yeah. If you want to read more about it, I'll
to
pop
see
that.
how kind of lo-fi the first advert was,
I mean, it had a little bit of excitement around it, though. I love the kind of evolution thing they've done there. So I'll pop that in the show notes at theretrohour.com if you want to find out more. Now, you might think Let's Plays on YouTube are kind of, what teenagers and stuff do.
Yeah, no. Well, we found a 90-year-old granny that's currently doing one. And her name's Shirley Curry. And she was kind of doing, like, Skyrim.
Yeah.
And small videos. And then... suddenly she woke up one morning and she had 11,000.
One morning?
One morning.
Sound like hello.
One morning. And she had 10,000 emails from strangers in her inbox. And she got completely scared. She said, it scared the pudding out of me. That was it.
So this is after her first ever, she did like a Skyrim Let's Play then, didn't she?
Yeah, and someone put it on Reddit. And then it just completely blew up. They all emailed her. And then she sat there replying to every single email politely.
My word. But, she's embraced it now.
Yeah, totally. She's playing everything at the moment. She's playing Call of Duty. She's playing Civ 2, everything.
I watched her Skyrim stuff, and she's better than me at Skyrim.
Yeah?
Yeah, she knows. Her score's actually pretty decent on it. So I think that's awesome, though. And, I think fair play, Shirley, keep it going.
Yeah, and she says, she's had quite a few rude and hateful comments.
Haven't we all?
And then she offers them a chance to apologise. And lots of people have said, sorry, Grandma Shirley, I shouldn't be so rude.
You've got to respect your elders, haven't you?
Yeah. So now she's dishing out manners on the internet. It's great.
Shirley, keep it going.
Yeah, keep it rocking.
Absolutely. So if you want to watch some of her videos as well, I highly, you didn't watch it at first, you think, it's a bit of a novelty of a gaming granny. But actually, when you get into it, she's really good.
Yeah, she is. Shirley Curry.
Yeah, so check her out on YouTube. Definitely worth a look. And just imagine if she's your grandma. The coolest granny in the world.
Totally.
Now, The Atari Lynx is not a system that we've covered all that much on the show. I'm going to tell you something about the Lynx, though.
Yeah.
I've nearly bought one 3 times in the last month. Today, I
In the
nearly bought
last
one.
month,
Yeah.
I remember we nearly bought one at that retro show, and I went up to the guy and I was like, "Oh yeah, can I get this and everything?" And then I thought I might as well ask if it actually works.
Yeah.
And then he was like, "No, the screen doesn't work." I was like,
Oh,
"There's
good
no
shout.
point." Yeah.
Well, I keep seeing one, over in Derby, Retro World in the Eagle
Yeah.
Market over there. There's been one in there. It's kind of a retro gaming store near us in the market. There's been one in there for about 4 months now. And I was in there today doing a bit of shopping, walked past it and I saw it on the shelf, 95 quid. And literally, I got my card out and the guy's like, "Oh, we don't do cards. The card machine's broken." So I was like, "Oh, I'll go and get money." And I changed my mind and didn't in the end. I was that close to buying it today.
They're going to be shining it up now if they hear this.
It's like, it's the second model and not the original massive one, the smaller one. But
Yeah. It's a nice system.
maybe now's the time to buy it, though.
Yeah, definitely, because they've just released a new game for it.
I'm going to let you say the title of the game.
Oh, God. Welter Schnacklachter.
Welton Schlachter.
Yeah.
So what, is this kind of like a new game that's coming out on the Lynx then?
Yeah, and it's kind of just, it's not side-scrolling, it's just a kind of side shooter, it looks like, and it's a little fun game. But, they're saying that not many people have been interested in the Lynx for a long time, and they have this massive festival, which is called EJAG,
Yeah.
which is this massive Jaguar event, and they're saying that this game kind of came from there. And this is off Funstock's website.
Well, there is a YouTuber called QL versus Jaguar. He's one of my favourite Atari. He's got the most insane Atari Jaguar collection. He's got pretty much everything. And he's got all footage from when the Jag was launched and all the virtual reality. I actually used a few of his clips in my Jaguar video I did a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Nice guy. I've been talking to him quite a lot. And he goes every year and films this Jag Fest and does a walk around. So definitely worth a look on YouTube. But it is it's where you go in Europe if you're an Atari fan.
Totally. They're saying, they're releasing Atari books there. There's still people in the games industry that are there. It's a massive Jaguar event. It's amazing. We should go one day, man.
Oh, it looks awesome. I'd love to go along. And I'm going to play a little bit of the sound off this game, of this Welton Schlachter. Have a listen to this. Very old school.
Yeah, totally.
Let's get that music again. I love about it as well. The put, trademark 1980, LucasSoft.
Yeah.
So it's probably go for that throwback kind of feel to it. But you know what it reminds me of? I mean, graphically, the Lynx can do a lot better than this. It does look like, an early kind of Atari 8-bit game. Reminds me quite a bit of Jeff Minter's early games.
Yeah. It's kind of got that look. And I think they're kind of going for that old schooly Atari look as well. Obviously the Lynx could do stuff like California games and stuff like that later on.
Yeah.
More kind of 16-bitty looking titles. But it's good that people are just developing for it now. And there's interest. Maybe there'll be an EverDrive. Maybe there'll be, some strange add-ons for the Lynx.
Well, there is a guy on the Atari Age forum who's actually doing an SD card reader for it, which I think is coming out early next year. Then he's a guy who's doing the Jaguar one after as well.
Nice. Maybe there'll be a remake of the Lynx. That would be good.
I bet you can do it on a Raspberry Pi or something, or one of your Arduinos or something,
Arduino
your pocket
Lynx.
PC. So that's awesome, though. I mean, I love it when obscure platforms get new releases.
Yeah, totally.
It tickles me. Ever want to print your own Commodore PET?
Oh, well, I saw this story, Dan, and I thought of you, because I know that you want a Commodore PET.
I do.
Yeah, but they're the size of a brick house, and you could kind of use them as a doorstop, and they're just completely really heavy, aren't they?
I live quite high up. I think it'd fall through my floor.
Yeah, probably kill your person below you.
So this is a 3D printed, LED-backed Commodore PET. This thing looks awesome.
Yeah, and it's under Creative Commons, so basically anybody with a 3D printer can get the plans of this and print out their little PET. Now, the difference with this is that they've put this little board in there, and the board is an actual LED board, so the screen of the 3D printed PET will glow with green LEDs, and you can create little patterns on there. You could even have a big C for Commodore or something.
And it looks like an old school when you're on a train or something and kind of the information scrolls by, it's kind of that like the Matrix kind of thing. But
dot matrix style.
Yeah, and it is the original kind of bright green colour that the PET was. The video on that. So.
But it's just about the size for your Playmobil.
Yeah.
And
3D printers are becoming quite affordable now.
Yeah, they're really good. We had a few little nice 3D printed things, like a 3D printed Nextbox and stuff like that. And, they're starting to look really nice. There's different methods. I remember when they first started doing it, and the sides were looking all jaggy and the plastic would look a bit jaggy. Now they seem to have kind of smoothed that out.
Yeah, and they're not as kind of stripy anymore,
Yeah,
are they? They used to be
no.
quite, yeah. But I saw one you can get at home for about 800 quid now.
Wow.
It's like, even like a year, 2 years ago, I remember like my local Asda here had one, and it was kind of a novelty going in. The machine cost something like 50 grand or something.
Yeah.
But in 2 years, like, you now get one for like 800 quid.
Well, when we were at Amiga Amsterdam, we were walking past a few shops that had them in the windows, and we were like, 3D printers. Yeah.
But now, spare under 800 quid, you can print your own Commodore PET.
Yeah, definitely.
Right, then, thank you for checking out episode number 52 of the Retro Hour podcast. We'll be out again next Friday, available from all of your favourite podcast clients, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, YouTube. And, of course, don't forget, we have got this competition running to win a signed, personalised copy of the Oliver Twins book, The Story of the Oliver Twins. Let's go, Dizzy. So all you got to do is answer the question.
Who is Dizzy's girlfriend? A, Princess Peach, B, Daisy, or C, Amy?
They've got 2 weeks from today. Enter that at theretrohour.com, and then we'll pick out a winner. The Oliver Twins will sign it and leave you a nice little personal message in there as well.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll throw loads of Sky Saga goodies in there as well. They usually do.
Well, it's like, that is going to be such a collectible, though, isn't it? Having a signed copy of that book for you.
Oh, totally. And I I think they might print a massive amount of these books as well. They're kind of for the hardcore fan.
So make sure you enter that on our website right now at theretrohour.com. Okay, are you ready for some Team 17 chat?
We've got our interview with Martyn Brown. Here we go.
And we'll see you next Friday.
Ciao.
You're listening to the Retro Hour podcast, and it's time to welcome our first guest of 2017. And what a guest to start the year with. Martyn Brown, thank you for coming on the show.
Nice to be here.
Now, before we get into your story of like Team 17 and a lot of the games that Ravi and I absolutely adore, we just want to get a bit of a background on you. What was your first ever gaming experience then? Let's go all the way back.
I'd imagine it probably been on a home computer around about early 80s, probably just about the time when the ZX Spectrum and ZX 81 had been around, really. So I sort of playing games on them, and then got a VCS, and obviously just went through the whole rung of computers and video games since then, really. So,
did you used to frequent the arcade scene much?
Well, I think around that time, I think I used to sort of hang around the back of Jack Records in Wakefield, and whilst I was going through college and everything else, there'd be I think it's an Asteroids and something else, some of the crappy game actually that was in the common room. So I used to do all that, and obviously get out to the coast and Blackpool and stuff. Those things like that were a bit of a treat for me back then. I'm a bit horrified at the thought of going to Blackpool now.
So, what was your first then home computer system?
I think it's probably this Specky. I got one for Christmas when I was about 15 or something, which seems a long time ago now. I would think it was Specky, and pretty quickly after that I went Commodore 128 I had, then an ST, then obviously an Amiga for a bunch of years, and then everything since then. Our house is still bloody full of kit, really.
What kind of stuff were you doing on your Spectrum then in those early days when you first got it?
When I first got a Specky, I was just intrigued by programming, really. So I just started, doing the usual typing in stuff, modifying it and all the rest of it. And I started on machine code and taught myself machine code and assembler and everything, and started to program, really. But I think I had more fun just sort of creating stuff than playing games. I mean, I spent a lot of time looking at games and playing them, but I equally just like creating things, really.
I think, those early kind of 8-bits as well, I mean, you were kind of inspired to program because you turned them on, you got dropped into BASIC, didn't you? So it's like
absolutely, yeah. You had no choice. He was straight there. I mean, to even get something to run, you had to essentially type a very, very small program just to load the game up.
So I hear you were a user of BBS and the kind of early online stuff at the time.
Yeah, I was. I can't remember much about it these days. I used to go on it when I come back from the pub. I think there's a group on Facebook actually for all these sad old buggers that used to be on there. So I think that's what we are now. I mean, that's very early geeks, I think, really.
Was that how you kind of fell into the PD scene through like CompuServe and stuff like that?
A little bit like that. Certainly a lot of the stuff on the 64 that was on CompuServe. And again, I was sort of more intrigued by what people were creating, demo-wise, art-wise, music-wise, than games, really. So I think that really sort of propelled me, particularly on the Amiga. So I got really involved with a lot of that and got to know an awful lot of people, which is sort of the semblance of bringing everybody together later on anyway. So.
Those early days on bulletin boards then, I mean, it must have felt quite magical, just being able to communicate with other people on your machine.
Yeah, I think it was obviously it was super early days and the things were very basic back then, but it certainly seemed magical, at the time with pretty basic equipment we were using when you think about it, at dreadful speeds and all the rest of it. But you met sort of other like-minded fools and got on and had a great time, really. And it just felt pretty unique because not many people were doing that kind of thing. And I think it just carried on really on the Amiga and just sort of the sort of demo scene, if you like, just kind of exploded.
So you kind of decided to start focusing on Amiga. Why did you pick that particular system?
It was a weird thing, really. I mean, the Amiga stuff, it was like a big acceleration of everything that had gone before it, really, in terms of what you could do art-wise, music-wise, code-wise, everything else. And people were grouping together and there was just a vibe about the sort of the users, really. And I'd never really experienced it since, where there's such a dramatic affection for the machine, really. So it was just kind of inspiring, and people were comparing what they were doing to everybody else, and that was further inspiring those people. So I think it's just a very buoyant, exciting time, really. And we looked at what was going on, and we felt, I think, for the first time ever, that we a bunch of us could make a game that could stand up alongside not only other games that were coming out, which most were actually ST ports, but stuff that was going on in the arcades then.
Yeah, because I remember you first started 17-bit software, which was 1 bit above the rest, and we, as Amiga users, we used to have 17-bit software like floppies absolutely everywhere. I think people probably had about 20 in each of their collection. Yeah,
it's just one of those things. It just like wildfire, really, and everyone got very excited, and everyone really liked it. And I think it was just a good time to be around computing, really.
So, for people that may not have experienced the Amiga demo scene, how do you describe that?
The cool thing was like it was every few days there'd be a demo, some visual effects hung together with some music, some silly scrolly text, sort of further pushing the capabilities of what the computer could do. And so it was always it just became a art house and super exciting.
How did the relationship with Rico Holmes and Alistair Brimble start?
So those guys were sort of members of the sort of 17-bit club, if you like, or whatever we called it back then. Those guys, because we used to sort of appeal for people to send in artworks, what we'd feature on the sort of monthly demo disc thing that we put together. So Rico and Alistair we sort of started pushing stuff together really early on, and we started featuring that and making their work sort of central to the update, what we used to put out there. And everything kind of sprang from then, and it was sort of later on when we received a game demo from Sweden, from Andreas, that decided to get all the guys together and form a team, really.
Running a public domain library back then, I mean, it seems insane now to imagine that we used to send a fiver on a postage order or a check and then wait like a week for a floppy disk to arrive. But was it a lot of work running a public domain library? What was kind of like a typical day?
Yeah, well, typical. I mean, we didn't just sit there by a copy machine all day. I mean, there's an awful lot of stuff to sort of, actually just creating the library, looking at stuff, putting it together. The monthly update became more and more complex and full-featured. So there's a lot of time putting all that together. looking at an awful lot of stuff. You know, it's one of those things. It kind of just sort of grew in its own thing. It was never kind of planned. It was all pretty ad hoc, really.
And were you guys was it kind of your full-time job then, or were you doing it part-time?
It's obviously started off. I worked in a game store in Leeds, and it was part-time at first. And obviously, it just became sort of a victim of its own success and became very, very busy. So I kind of ended up doing it full time for about 18 months, I think. And obviously, I think you only need to look at the sort of first 50, 100 discs. There's so much stuff. And it's all, and particularly all the sort of utilities and things. You have to try them all out and see what everything's doing. I mean, I ended up writing a bit of stuff myself and putting that in there and all the rest of it. It was just, I don't know, it's just really, really good time to, be sat sifting through all that stuff.
So you mentioned the Atari ST ports, that they were kind of a lot of really bad quality ones. Was that a source of frustration for you guys? Because you knew the Amiga
I mean, we were big Amiga fans, and, we knew what the machine was capable of. So we were a little bit dismayed, when these what to us looked like quick and scruffy ports had appear and didn't do the Amiga justice. I mean, I've since spent 30 years in the games industry, and I'm well aware of how things work now. But back being a sort of in my early 20s, sort of naive and angry, I used to get really pissed off about it. But it's what really inspired us to go all out to do what we could, really, and it was just a lot of fun doing that.
Well, two of the early titles were Full Contact and Alien Breed, and of course, Alien Breed kind of went on to much more things. Why didn't you continue Full Contact?
I think the early plan, if there was any plan, it was to sort of visit a number of arcade genres, really, and do what we could in each genre and try to impress. If I'm honest, I don't think Full Contact was the greatest game. I mean, we actually released it at $9.99 or something. We didn't really feel it had the value of a full game back then. It looked great, and it had a snazzy demo title scene and things like that, and the sound was awesome. But I think we all the time we'd kind of got our eyes on bigger and better things, and obviously that was just the first title, really, other than a game that the guys had done, which got released by Codemasters, Miami Chase, I think. But yeah, I think it was also the first kind of half meg Amiga game, and everything after that became 1 meg, which really allowed us to do an awful lot more.
Yeah, Alien Breed, what a title. What kind of inspired this above view idea?
Well, I think you don't got to look far, really. I mean, you've got a few games like Gauntlet knocking around at the time, but yeah, I mean, the whole we were massive Aliens fans, and it just seemed to click, doing the game like that, really, and obviously capturing the atmosphere of the movie. I mean, we had somewhat of a little run-in with 21st Century Fox, but we did get some. There is in existence somewhere, I believe, a scruffy fax piece of paper from 21st Century saying it was okay, we could do it. So it wasn't licensed, of course, but we just didn't know how any of that kind of worked back then.
And the sound was completely stunning for that. You could tell Alistair just got a sampler. It was amazing. I think the whole point of us doing Amiga games, so half the memory was given over to sound, because we just felt it's got such a huge aspect of the game and the atmosphere, that if we used half the memory for audio and used it well, then we could really create something special.
Talking about audio there, I think for me, looking back at kind of games that were released on both the Amiga and the Atari ST, that is probably the biggest difference that you notice, because the sound chip on the Atari couldn't touch the Amiga, could it?
Oh God, no! It was far more capable. And again, if you've got an awful lot more memory available as well, you can do so much more sophisticated effects and sampling and everything else, and it just stood miles apart from the ST, which is exactly the effect we wanted.
Well, one thing as well that was unique was Team 17 used pretty much 99% Amiga hardware and assembly code to create the games. That's fantastic for me that you were using the actual machine to create the games for the machine. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of other people use, I guess, dare say, professional setups use PC and SNASM kits and all the rest of it. And we just used the Amigas. Everything was produced on an Amiga, simply because we just felt that that's all we needed, really. And other than Alice and his sampler and all the rest of it, it was great. I think it was a great sort of rubber stamp for the machine that we could do everything on it, really.
And I absolutely love the variety of games that Team 17 did. So as you were saying, the genres, they had a massive kind of different types, like platformers, bowling sims, fighting games. It was fantastic. Was it hard to adapt to these new genres?
Well, no, I think we'd sit around and there were lots of things we'd want to do and dip us toe into different games and do our versions of games that we liked and things like that. I mean, I think certainly that first 3 or 4 years, it was, really fueled on enthusiasm and naivety and everything else, and just doing it for the hell of it, really. There was no great plan. I think it's only when we had, absolutely massive success in Worms that we really had to take another approach, really. At the background, really, sort of 95 onwards, the industry and the technology was shifting and changing, and it wasn't an environment which was any longer friendly, really, for an outfit like us. I don't think it's really been like it was in the Amiga days for sort of starting up and just cracking on until recent, last 2 or 3 years on mobile, really. I think there was like a great middle age of gaming, if you like, which was on sort of walled fence console development. And, I think the industry was producing some great games now and again, but it's kind of in a rut for developers, really.
Yeah, it kind of went down the route of you had to have like movie studio sized teams to do a game, didn't you, for quite a long time?
Yeah, I mean, we, obviously all our early games are sort of 3-4 people at max, really. And I think, we got up to 80 on one game, not on Amiga, but certainly on consoles and stuff. And that becomes crazy. And then, I think some of the Ubisoft games recently have had like 1,000 staff on them, which is just, I just dread to think, it's like, I know some artists sat there saying, well, yeah, what did you do? I did that rock. So, I dread to think, when I was at Activision a few years ago, when we were doing the mobile Call of Duty, there was 80 staff on that on a mobile game. So just creating titles and content like that it's phenomenal undertaking, and I just don't know where the fun is in that, to be honest. And I think you've seen a lot of developers leaving larger studios and doing their own startups and finding themselves again, and so I certainly appreciate how that feels.
One game that Team 17 did that, when I was younger, me and my brother used to love this game, was Body Blows.
Yeah.
And I remember that came out. It was before Street Fighter came out on the Amiga, Street Fighter 2, wasn't it?
It was around about the same time. So we got talking to sort of Danny and Junior, the art and code team of it, and we just kind of went for it. And that was, but it wasn't really inspired by Street Fighter. It was inspired by other fighting games that were elsewhere, import only in Japan and things. So, but yeah, we had an awful lot of success with that. We were pretty lucky in that we'd done an half decent game, and Street Fighter was just awful on Amiga. And again, it was one of these hastily produced ports, which wasn't a great game.
Because I know around the time like Mortal Kombat had just come out and Street Fighter was obviously big on the Super Nintendo, but I remember being an Amiga user, you wanted like a great beat-em-up game to play at home, and you guys just, you filled the gap just at the right time, didn't you?
Yeah, I think it's. We were fortunate we timed it right. I say the game that pretty much most of the market was looking towards was a bit of a flop, and our game was just honest and it played well and looked good. And I think we kind of delivered, and it was really successful for us. Really, I think we did like a couple of follow-ups to it, but never touched it after that because everybody kind of went separate ways.
Well, another game as well that was kind of filled a gap in the Amiga world was Superfrog, which was this kind of fast platformer.
Well, yeah, I mean, the inspiration for that obviously was, the Sonic and the Nintendo stuff, and we just did our own spin on it, really. I mean, the Frog was originally supposed to get superpowers by drinking Newcastle Brown Ale, and that was later changed to Lucozade, unfortunately. And he was going to have a Geordie accent and everything, but we couldn't get the license and stuff for the things that we wanted. So. But anyway, the game worked out really well. I think it was probably one of the most accomplished titles that we did in terms of the playability and sort of balance curve and everything else. It was good fun and people liked it. It didn't sell as well as some of the other titles, but I think it was one of those titles that we'd finished and put down and thought, yeah, we're pleased with that.
Well, it had that great comical Eric Schwartz intro as well.
Yeah. It's again, that was going back to some of the demo stuff, and I'd got to know a few of these people, so we thought it'd be just a great opportunity to have an intro by Eric Schwartz. So we went and just approached him and did it. We did quite a few things like that. We went back to sort of people in the Amiga community that were known and I think would sort of people would get excited about. So we did quite a bit of that.
Around that time, obviously, it was kind of just before the internet boom kind of came around, the early 90s. How important were magazine reviews to you back then?
We lived and died by them. It's quite the reverse of today where everything's online. It's the only way that people found out about games, really, other than word of mouth. It was either the playground, the classroom at college, or it was a magazine, and the cover discs and everything else that that was so vital to the industry back then. And I think that was part of the excitement. There was the anticipation of actually getting coding around and having a look at the games, where obviously you can just see everything now either on YouTube or download it in an instant, and you can just sort of brush past things really quickly now. But you had to really actually wait for it and kind of earn the right to have a look at it back then.
Which magazines did you really get on with, and which ones didn't you? Were there any kind of different ones?
We had really good friendships with the One and CU Amiga and people like this, and the ones down at in Bath were a bit different. So Amiga Format was great, and a few of us, and then there was I think some sort of well published spats with Amiga Power. A couple of individuals there, but these things happened. Really, it's largely speaking got on with everybody and have done till this day. Really.
Could you tell us the story about how you met Andy Davidson and kind of Worms started?
Yeah, that was down at an ECTS show. As usual, at that time, we'd invite people to obviously bring demos and stuff they were working on, because we were working with a lot of indie developers. We didn't really have anybody in-house at the time. All the teams were sort of built and sort of thrived independently. Pretty much like the mobile side of things these days. But yeah, Andy turned up. It was quite obvious he was quite mental in a good way, and it's again such real sort of enthusiasm for what it was developing, or had been developing for ages. And he developed this game called Total Wormage that developed in Amiga Basic, Blitz Basic, sorry, and had just lost the competition for Amiga formats. I mean, it didn't even place, I don't think, in the final sort of four or whatever. And we just loved the game, thought it had something. To be fair, we really only saw it as a budget release initially, but that kind of changed in time. But Andy got involved with us for a few years, and we sort of did various sort of Worms with him and without him and all the rest of it. But Andy was a very sort of strong-minded individual that just wanted to do games his way, and the industry had started to change and didn't really allow people to work like he wanted to work. So that became a problem as time went on. And, we'd suddenly gone from, 3 or 4 people on games to, 15, 20 people contributing to a title, and that didn't really allow people, just one person, to sit on a game and make a game anymore, which we became at odds with, really. But at the time, Andy had an unbelievable time. It was proper sort of rags to riches, overnight success. He was sort of in his early 20s and had a #1 title on console as well as Amiga, and all he really cared about was having an Amiga game released. Really, that's all he wanted, because I don't think there was many other stronger devotees of the Amiga than Andy himself.
Were you surprised by the success? Because it was so late in the Amiga's life. Like, we kind of wrote it off a little bit, and then suddenly Worms came out. And
I think we were a little bit worried at the time about because the Amiga had been very good to us, and it was kind of in a decline at the time. People were going nuts playing it. People were going crazy playing it. All hours of the day, and it was just fairly obvious to us that we'd got something very special on our hands, because people were just so addicted to it and just loved it to bits. So, whilst we were probably a little bit surprised about how well it took to PlayStation and PC and stuff, we weren't surprised at people's reactions to it, because we'd seen it firsthand, and then we were all party to it. There was Worms parties all the time. So we knew something was going to happen, but obviously we were delighted that it just went crazy, really.
Why do you think it was such a success, then? What is it about Worms?
I think, and again, it's been a good level of looking back at the original Worms and looking at some of the sort of mobile hits the last year or two, is that because it didn't give a stuff about how it looked. It was all about the devil in the detail and the gameplay, really, and the fact that Worms is almost like an instrument for the humour. The game just worked brilliantly as a social pastime, really, and just the fact that it was different every time, and there was always ludicrous events happening, and it just caught the imagination from people putting in their own names to the teams, to the samples, to everything else, and it was very hard to find another game that you could play with 3 or 4 people for hours on end and never really tire of.
You guys must have been working so hard back then, because you look at the the list of games that you guys brought out in just half a decade. Some phenomenal quality, even like Super Stardust and the original Stardust game as well.
Well, that was developed in Finland by what were now Housemarque. So very high caliber developers. Great people we've known ever since then, and worked with a few times back in the 2000s as well. They're tremendously competent programmers and technical developers, really, who did just sensational work, really. We were working on a lot of stuff. I think from 95 to probably 2000, we'd started developing on a lot of titles, but many just didn't see the light of day, because we were having to shift development strategies, and because the technology at the time was just racing away, it became very difficult to develop for, actually. And we grew from being sort of 8 or 9 people internally in about 93 to 97, 98, we were 100 people or sort of thereabouts, and that became almost impossible to manage that kind of growth. And I see today, I think the similar kind of thing happened at Rovio when they were a dozen people in just when Angry Birds came out, and then 3 years later there were 900 people. So I think it's almost impossible to manage, when there's that many people. People don't have the experience to just manage that thing. It's sad to see, and it's sometimes awful to be embroiled in those sort of growth pains, really. But I think it's when you sort of the links to people socially break down, and then you just can't hope to really get things together like you could. So I certainly preferred working on the sort of sub-10-man team titles.
Well, Stardust and Super Stardust, I mean, they were essentially like, you could say Asteroids clones, really, weren't they?
Yeah, I think they were, yeah.
Were you surprised how well received they were?
Oh, they were phenomenally well received. I mean, they may well have been kind of obviously inspired by Asteroids, but the sort of technology used in developing the art for the games, the slick coding and all the rest of it, and certainly the tunnel sequence in Stardust was kind of really just an amazing demo of the Amiga's potential, really.
I know you did like a version for the Amiga 1200, like the AGA version as well. Did the AGA chipset help you guys do a lot more? Did you find it like a good
we could do. The thing is, it was a small step up, I think. So there's improvements. I mean, at the time, we were working pretty closely with Commodore. Because obviously they got CD32 was out, which used the AGA chipset, and then we were there to sort of try and help support Commodore's efforts, to be honest. But I think it was just a little bit too late, and the CD32 just wasn't the machine Commodore kind of hoped it was, and it just wasn't. They weren't supported really by other software houses that well, so there just wasn't much, in the way of titles for it, really. And as I say, I think it was a small step rather than the big step which probably needed.
Well, I got a PlayStation 4 VR recently, and Stardust on that, isn't it? You got your Super Stardust VRs on there. Did you think 22 years later that would be a franchise that was still around?
Well, the thing is, like, good games are good games, right? And I think that those guys, again, producing Stardust now, it looks phenomenal on PlayStation 3 and 4 and VR. So that's the same guys who did that game back in the day. So I think as long as the basics of the game are there and everything's done, I mean, you can just do so much visually now. It's impressive.
A real visually impressive game that you guys made was Alien Breed 3D. How much of a kind of technical challenge was that to get that first-person shooter style?
It was very hard. I mean, Andy, who did the code, he was at university, York Uni at the time, just doing it in a project by himself, which essentially was Doom on the Amiga. Later he did Alien Breed 3D 2, which is essentially Quake, which is a full 3D engine. But I mean, he's just a very clever lad that could do that kind of stuff and still does that kind of stuff today. So it was exciting for us. It was a bit of a departure in terms of the game, but I think that was more really Amiga owners wanting to see their machine doing that stuff. And again, when you think back to it, I mean, it was a kind of small window on the engine that, unless you had some kind of a new 3D board or maths board processor in the Amiga that could really power it. And that was the problem. It was previous to that, Alien Breed was all about sprites and being clever tricks. But when it was actual, raw grunt in terms of processing, it needed some assistance, really. And I think that's when we were talking about the AGA Amiga and CD32 and stuff. It was perhaps that kind of processing grunt we could have required and done fantastic things with back in the day.
So I think, to Amiga fans, it was always kind of a bit of a challenge, really, wasn't it? It was always like, people telling you your machine can't run Doom. So,
yeah.
I guess that probably inspired it quite a lot.
Yeah, there was a lot of that stuff. And, I mean, we never sort of expected to see those kind of games and that kind of software running on an Amiga at the time. So, for it to do it and prove and do that, it was all about that. And, people, it's what, people got very excited about it. So I think he got Game of the Year as well in one thing, which was delivering the impossible, or doing stuff that made people really excited and happy. It was good.
You mentioned the second Alien Breed 3D game as well, which I remember reading in like one of the magazines at the time that like the game was that powerful that there wasn't actually an Amiga powerful enough to run it properly.
Yeah, you had to have some crazy fast processor thing on strapped to your machine and put it inside a fridge to cool it down. But it was kind of a little bit ahead of its time, and it was doing things that it really shouldn't have been doing. But yeah, we did it, and I think what we did, because that was right at the sort of end really of the Amiga's kind of commercial interest in it as a marketplace. So we, not too long after that, we ended up just giving the source code away back to the fans, kind of thing. So which was, we felt was a nice thing to do. So because the people that were really into that kind of thing could get a lot more out of it.
From a commercial perspective, though, releasing a game that so few people could run, that must was that a difficult decision to to justify releasing it?
That wasn't a cold-hearted business decision. That was a kind of fair well on the Amiga, and look, we developed this title, we might as well put it out there. We were pretty busy with Worms and everything else at the time, so I think just in general the Amiga disappeared out of stores and it just dwindled away. Really, it was kind of a sad end after pretty good 6 or 7 years in sort of mass market. So it was a shame, and we just at that time we weren't 6 or 7 people anymore. We were like quite a large studio for the UK. And there was just lots of other things happening on PC and other consoles. And obviously, as soon as the PlayStation came out, that kind of shifted the UK development in its entirety, really. And a lot of the small independent developers kind of struggled to stay afloat after that.
Well, one kind of semi-recent thing that I saw was the Alien Breed games that have been redone. And I've actually downloaded these, and they're all great. How involved were you with that, and what did it feel like getting it into the public eye again?
Well, yeah, I was very involved with it. We worked very closely. We'd had quite a lot of success on Xbox Live with Worms, and we started talking to Microsoft about doing a sort of a rebirth of Alien Breed, which we'd always talked about it. We'd had probably 2 or 3 titles in development over the years, but nothing ever came out or made it so far. So we got the opportunity to work with Unreal Engine, and we just thought we'd got a good team, and we'd put a decent Alien Breed title out together. I think we made, in hindsight, a couple of wrong decisions. We should have made the entire thing co-op play, and we kind of got led down the path a little bit by Microsoft to do episodic content, because they were very keen on having episodic games at the time. So we sort of did a 3-episode thing where I think I'd have that time again. I'd do it co-op and one game, really. But we're certainly very happy with how it looked and played and felt. Again, a bit of a departure, but it certainly felt like the original game to us making it anyway.
Had the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Are you keeping an eye on Team 17? Because they've been releasing like The Escapist, which is a really 8-bit retro kind of title, and Worms WMD, which is a new kind of really good Worms.
Well, as I see that, they put stuff out. I mean, to be 5 miles down the road, and I've still got quite a few friends there, so I'm quite aware of what they're doing. I mean, I'm just doing completely different stuff these days. So, I have a look at what they're doing and play the games, and I drink a pint with 2 or 3 of their guys. We see what's going on.
It's amazing that, it's really a testament to the amazing games that you guys have done over the years that they're still going now, over 2 decades on.
Well, they're a different shape and different function these days. I think they've been pretty bright about how they've gone about. They've pulled everything together and allow people, like Mouldy Tooth and stuff, to get their games published and boxed and whatever else. To do that thing on consoles is quite a task, really. So I think it's fair play that they're acting as a sort of a publishing solution for those people.
And like Worms must be on like every single platform in existence now, like some form of Worms.
I don't know. I mean, I kind of ran the game for 15 years or something. So yeah, I played a lot of Worms on a lot of formats, and I have not played it much since leaving 5 or 6 years ago. So I've played too many games of Worms.
You kind of OD'd on it, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Martyn, what are you doing these days then?
I work with quite a bunch of different developers for a while, sort of consulting on developing the companies and bits and pieces, business development stuff. But the last 3 years I've been involved with a mobile titles. So I've been involved with New Star Soccer and recently New Star Cricket and some other stuff that we've done. I mean, New Star Soccer's done like 27 million installs now.
Nice.
So that's, to be honest, it's a different place out there on mobile. It's not so much about like the old school getting excited about the developers and the teams and things. People just don't really care on the phones. So we put stuff out there and we just don't really talk about it or shout about it very much. It won a BAFTA and things like that. And so, we've done all right with it. But I just remain completely in the background now, and we just let what we do speak for itself.
You let the games live on their own merit then, that's cool.
Absolutely, yeah. We don't do any hype. We very, very rarely do any kind of interviews or anything these days, and just growing old gracefully and having a good time.
Well, if our listeners, obviously, who know all your games from back in the day, they want to try out some of your new stuff, what do they look for? Is there any website they can go to? Or?
Well, it's just the App Store and Google Play, basically. I mean, I'd be hard-pressed to find many people in the UK who haven't played New Star Soccer. It's incredibly addictive. One of the things that sort of drew me to that was sort of very similarities about that and the sort of early version of Worms, really. Not that they're the same game, but there's the same spirit about it, really, because the guy who's put most of New Star Soccer together is again just an incredibly talented individual, and it's a wonderful piece of software. That's a lot of fun, and that's this free to play, which I know is not a great phrase to use for people these days who are hardcore. But that's why it's had 27 million people. I think around 8 or 9 million people in the UK play it, which is a fair slice of the population.
Well, Martyn, it's been amazing talking to you and getting all your memories and finding out the stories behind some of our all-time favourite games.
Yeah, I'm glad I can remember some stuff.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
All right, no problem.